Hello and welcome to the Everyday Adventure Podcast. My name is Nikki Bass and I will be bringing you thoughts, ideas and stories from some incredible guests to hopefully inspire you to live more adventurously in your everyday lives. So today I am absolutely thrilled to be speaking to Keri Wallace, who is the founder of Girls on Hills, which is the UK's only guided trail, fell and skyrunning company, which is designed specifically for women. And their runs take place in the stunning Glencoe area of the Scottish Highlands. And they also offer navigation and mountain safety courses, but all with the emphasis of getting women out into the hills and sort of embracing hill walking and trail running specifically. And their most recent project was supporting Black trail runners led by Sabrina Pace-Humphreys, who are taking on the Ramsay Round challenge, which is one of the big 3 UK mountain rounds and covers 56 miles, and including Ben Nevis. So I can imagine there's quite a lot of hills involved in this as well. I followed the Ramsay Round and this sort of incredible challenge on social media, not having been introduced yet to Keri. And then totally coincidentally, a mutual friend of ours got in touch and said, would you like to have a chat with Keri? I think she'd be brilliant for your show. And I was like, yes, perfect timing. She was like, she was in my head. So a huge thanks to Jen for connecting us. And Keri, it's so brilliant to have you here. Thank you so much for joining me.
No, thanks for having me on.
So I guess I'd like to sort of just start with your motivation for setting up Girls on Hills. Where did the idea come from?
I think, to be honest, it was probably brought about by a change in my own work-life balance after I had my 2 girls. I just found it really difficult to fit running into my life anymore. And I just realised that I was doing a lot of commuting and I lived far away from family and that kind of thing. And I just decided that I needed to shake my life up, really. I needed to redress that balance and find something that worked for me. And almost at that sort of time, my friend and colleague, Nancy Kennedy, said to me, we should start a running business. And I remember saying, no, we actually should. And she said, no, really, we actually should. And we sort of laughed because it was actually a joke, but not a joke. And before you know it, we'd kind of come up with this concept of just getting a few courses out there and taking women out running in our local area. And I guess we just didn't see it coming. We didn't really see the success around the corner with that concept. And it just sort of grew arms and legs, really, and became more popular. And eventually I was able to quit my day job, which was fantastic, and stop commuting up and down to Oban, and now I can focus on Girls on Hills. So it's been brilliant. But I suppose the other side of that is why did we think of taking women running in the local area? And I suppose that was more to do with the fact that lots of people have been saying to us, it's amazing what you ladies do. I could never do that. And of course, when you do that, you realise, well, actually, it's really not that hard. It's not that much involved, and there's a lot of, I suppose, anxiety around how good you have to be or how fast you have to be or the skills you have to go running in the hills, and particularly on your own. And we wanted to sort of open that up for people and make it more accessible. So that's kind of how it came about.
That's really interesting, isn't it? I know, it's quite funny because I suppose much more recently, especially doing this podcast, I've been connected with all sorts of people who do amazing, hill running and trail running, all this sort of thing. But I can sort of cast my mind back, even a few years and just thinking, hearing of people doing it and thinking, gosh, that is so out of anything that I would feel is possible for me, or would even, it would just felt like this completely otherworldly type activity. And that's, I guess from a background of being relatively fit and, not loving running that much, but, I run fairly regularly, but it felt so far removed. And I guess I can sort of relate to that, whether, the anxiety or the sort of just that sense of this isn't something for me. This is like, you have to
I can't
be
do
so
that.
uber fit. And so, like little mountain goats scampering up the hill sort of thing.
Yeah. And actually, like most of the women who come out with us say afterwards that the scariest thing about it was signing up. It's just that thought of like, I don't know if I should do this. This is probably a stupid idea. And then when they get there, they're sort of at their ease and like, it's actually not that bad. So, yeah.
No, that's really, and often it is, I think, we always talk about that in terms of adventures, that it's that taking the first step, but, having the belief that this is something that you could maybe even tackle, I think is huge. So, I guess in terms of the people who have come out on the trails with you or who've signed up, what are you talk about, that sort of signing up process and actually just getting out there. But in terms of some of the challenges they face when they are out on the mountains, obviously the physical side of things is huge. But I was just wondering if either they, or you've noticed something with them, or even something you've experienced yourself that you think actually, that's quite a big hurdle, and it's amazing to watch people overcome it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that by working with lots of women, but also having experienced some of these things myself, I've started to sort of recognize now that there's a number of kind of, I always refer to them as barriers, but that might be a bit hard because they're not actual physical barriers that like the ones that used to exist for women in sport. They're very much kind of psychological or self-imposed barriers. I call them soft barriers. They're things that we've maybe picked up from the culture that we live in, from society. And exactly as you said, I can't do that. That just wouldn't be possible for me. Where does that come from? And for some women, and obviously you can't generalize about everybody, but for some women, it's things like their experience of maybe being the slowest, or worrying about their pace, or being in running groups and holding people back, or being in mixed groups and always being slow. There's more men than women, and you're at the back. And for other people who have no experience of being in the hills, it can be things like, what clothes do I wear? How do I navigate? I've never done any navigation. My husband's always got the map. I don't, how do I go for a pee outdoors? Like, just all kinds of things. It can take all sorts of shapes and sizes, and I think there's no one thing, but a lot of the time it is to do with what's perceived to be confidence. Women may be lacking the confidence to try some of these things, but in actual fact, I just think it's unanswered questions. I think it's not knowing what's expected. When I say to the ladies that we take out, that actually, if you've got a good level of fitness, you can run 10K, you can definitely come out and run in the hills, and you can go all day, because we'll just walk a bit and run a bit. And no, we don't run up the hills, we walk up the hills, and then we do a bit of jogging. And if we want to stop and have a sandwich, we can do that. It's not like a flat out boot camp. And it completely changes people's mindset from, gosh, this is going to be really hard and stressful, I'm going to really suffer, to actually, this is a journey, and I really enjoy being in these open spaces. So it's just a different approach really to the same thing.
I love that. It's like you said, not even the sort of the change in the activity, but just the change in how you see it. And I was always thinking, that thing of where you say, oh, well, you're just heading out there and being in the landscape. I can imagine in lots of ways it's quite mindful. It's quite sort of.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's the big difference. And it's really, really hard to go out with a running group. Obviously running clubs are very structured around different paces and different aspirations and different training programs of their athletes and things like that. But this is a totally different thing. This is sort of, on the one hand, it's a social thing. On the other hand, it's a learning experience. And quite as you say, it's very much a sort of, it's a health and well-being, a strategy, I suppose, a way for people to get out there, away from the chaos of their day-to-day life. Certainly that describes my experience, the chaos of my day-to-day life, and yes, the mindfulness.
Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, I'm basically want to sign up now, and this is from someone who never thought they would ever say that. So we can just end this conversation, I'll come and sign up. I guess, you've talked about, some of the, I guess, the benefits of the activity and, what you can take personally from it. Have you got any sort of favorite moments of when you've had somebody or a group out on the hills and you've seen them either accomplish something or just experience something, and it sort of really caught you unawares in a way, or like you've gone, oh my gosh, that's amazing?
Yeah, I think it's less subtle. It's more subtle than that, in the sense that I think often we'll see people's kind of nervousness at the start of a day, and maybe they haven't done this before. And it usually comes out at the end of the day when everything's all said and done. Wow, actually, that was amazing. It's totally opened my eyes to something that I can do, and how do I do more of this? And a sudden sort of, once it's over, the kind of the review process, I suppose some of it sometimes is a bit type 2 fun, isn't it? There's a bit of rain and wind, and it's a bit of putting yourself out there, joining a course with people you don't know. But once it's all kind of said and done, people look back and think, gosh, I didn't think I could do that. And I've done so much more than I thought. And I just, now I don't really know what's possible anymore because I'm redefining that. And that's really, uplifting thing to be a part of. But also, I think we've had a lot of people then go on to enter races or to do bigger days or to try things solo. And quite often they'll get in touch and send photos of things they've done. And that's a really rewarding thing as well, just sort of watching people start their own journey in the outdoors.
Yeah, like you said, the very fact that they keep in touch with you and go, right, you were the spur for that, I think is amazing. And I was just wondering, what for you have been, so you had this, this idea, this concept, and you wanted to start and support women in this space. What have been some of the unexpected benefits or outcomes for you that you sort of never envisaged when you set out to do this? And then, and you can now sort of reflect and go, wow, that's incredible. And
yeah, there's been quite a few things like that, actually. The first would probably be that when we first started out, we thought it would be mostly just about taking women running. And we straight away really immediately found out that actually when you get groups of women out on the hills and they're relaxed, everybody opens up and everybody's chatting, and suddenly people are more free about talking about their feelings and their experiences and their problems. And actually you become a bit of a sounding board for people, and it's a really therapeutic thing to be doing. And it's really helpful for people with their and lots of people, with their mental health, with their well-being. And lots of people do turn to running and to the outdoors as sort of a part of a toolkit for dealing with those kinds of things. And suddenly we realized, that had this other kind of added value that we didn't know about. And I felt a responsibility really for that. And I sort of felt underqualified to help, I was like, well, I'm not, able to offer you the support that you might need. But what I found is that actually everybody's just supporting each other, and just being out there and being in these places is really beneficial in itself. And I realized how much running means to people out with the normal just health and fitness, the basic physiological fitness. So that was a really fascinating, eye-opening experience. And I think that it just raised for me how, the value that running has, different value for different people in other areas of their lives. So that was kind of one thing, was a real eye-opener for me. And the other would be the inclusivity thing. And that's how we ended up really working with Black trail runners. The more I worked with women and spoke to women about the barriers and the issues that they were experiencing, accessing the outdoors and racing and things like that, the more I realized that there is an accessibility issue at the kind of point of entry for beginners. And as soon as I started to say something about that, I got a lot of backlash from women in the outdoors who were already sort of established outdoor enthusiasts, like climbing and running and doing all these things, saying, well, I don't see any barriers. I haven't experienced any barriers. And I realized that, of course, that doesn't apply to everybody, but it's the people who have experienced barriers whose voices we aren't hearing, because they're not there and they're not hearing that message. What I was kind of trying to highlight wasn't actually really applicable to those lucky women, if you like, who've managed to make it through and felt very unhindered by those kinds of self-limiting factors. So I realized that, the experiences that some women have getting out hill walking and running, so I tried to capture that with a survey. So I did a sort of a survey of the Scottish Women's Walking Group, and it came back from there that, like over 50% of women are worried about their pace, to the point where it's actually physically stopped them going out. A third of women are worried about their navigation skills and their inability to read a map or use a compass, and just so many other things such like that, really. And so after the whole sort of Black Lives Matter movement, I started to become more aware of the barriers that impacted people from different ethnic backgrounds in terms of getting into trail running, into hill running in the UK. And it just suddenly occurred to me that it's the same experience. Obviously, it's much more exaggerated and much more widespread for people, for Black runners, for example, than it is for women. but that's because there's been such a long history of change in addressing gender issues, and that's just not been there with racial issues, and that's now starting to change. And so I really wanted to get on board with saying, inclusivity is about making sure that everybody has access to the same thing. It's about equity rather than equality. It's about making sure that Black people and making sure that people of different skin color, different financial backgrounds, different ability levels, different ages, different sexualities. Everybody feels that they're welcome in that space and that they're represented in the outdoors, and it's an activity and a space for them. So that's how we got involved with Black Trail Runners and their Ramsay Round.
Gosh, I think it's such an interesting point I think you make about, the backlash that you experience.
Yeah.
I always find, I find it slightly mind-blowing that when people push back in that way and like you said, aren't even aware of the privilege that they experience that allows them not to have it be a problem.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I think to your credit to sort of push past that actually, and because I know that that's something that actually can be a barrier for people in terms of wanting to speak out or learn or do more, is that anxiety around backlash and people
about being discredited. Sabrina Pace Humphries told me that one of the biggest problems they face, that the Black Trail Runners is a registered charity now, one of the biggest issues they face is being discredited and being having their experiences downplayed or not listened to by other people who are actually frankly not in their situation. So that was just something, a small element of that I sort of recognized through what we've been doing at Girls on Hills. And so we offer to support the Black Trail Runners in their Ramsay Round and try and raise the profile of their mission, really.
And I can imagine that, like I said, I saw some of the footage as that was ongoing, and just, I think what comes up, because, social media is quite a difficult place to capture nuance and emotion and all of that side of things. Often it's like just a picture on a page or a short video or whatever, but I think there was something that was so raw and just it felt like such an incredible start to a shift towards something, maybe from watching that. And and then it strikes you that, gosh, this really shouldn't be unusual.
Yeah, no, exactly. I was really struck by the power of the experience that they went through those few days, and listening to their experiences of how they arrived at this challenge, and just being there together as a group of Black runners in the mountains. And even for myself, looking at the photographs that I took of the challenge afterwards, just thinking how if you like, how unusual they are to see sort of Black runners doing the same thing that you just see loads of white runners. Every time I open my social media is full of runners, and so but they're all white,
Yes.
And it's just so refreshing and so right to see that. And I just want those pictures to get out there and become more normal, and hopefully, this was obviously the idea behind the whole thing, but to inspire future generations of runners to feel like they all fit within our sport and have a part of the history. And that's how the Charlie Ramsay angle comes in, because Charlie Ramsay is Black, and that wasn't something that was well known, and to most people, most of us white people, is largely irrelevant. But if you're Black, hold on a minute, the originator of the ultimate Scottish fell running challenge was a Black man, and he's right there in the center of the history of our sport, and that means something. It means that, everybody, these Black trail runners who joined us up here in Scotland belong here, and that those faces should be in our mountains, and they're just simply not being represented. And hopefully these runners will go on to inspire a kind of change in that, and we'll see more and more, equality on the mountain.
No, absolutely. And like you said, on the other hand, prompt those of us with that, with the privilege of not having had to think about it, to actually question and think and go, what do I need to do to enable this to be, like you said, commonplace?
Yeah, what are my own unconscious biases, and what can I do to be supportive, rather than just, I guess it's that thing of rather than just not being racist, being anti-racist, and actually questioning what you can do for a positive change,
Definitely. I mean, it sounds like the most powerful experience. I'm just wondering, sort of either leading on from that, or, in terms of your own ambitions for Girls on Hills as well. I mean, what have you got either in the pipeline, or in terms of actually that's something that I would love to do, or that's what I'm focusing on next?
Well, I suppose we've got things that we want to do with Girls on Hills, and also things that we want to do, personally as individuals. So I suppose through Girls on Hills, we want to continue working to promote inclusivity in the outdoors. We hope to get more women competing in mountain races and ultra mountain races and those kinds of events where currently there's a fairly significant gender participation gap, or participation gap in gender anyway. And we want to continue to work with groups like Black Trail Runners and be an ally to that cause. I think there's other areas we're kind of aware of. We're working quite hard to make older women feel that they are still totally part of the fell running and trail running scene. And there's that age issue. What we haven't managed to do yet is to work with younger runners. And we have received a number of emails saying, my daughter really wants to get into running, and how, ultra running or trail running. How do I do this? Most of the groups seem to be, focused on adults or on older adults. And how do we get the young ones involved? And that's something we don't really have an answer to. And there are groups out there doing this kind of work, but we haven't managed to find a good solution for us yet. So that's maybe something that we'll be thinking about in the future. Certainly I've got my own 2 girls that I need to sort of try to get into the outdoors, and we've already started trying to drag them up a few hills and instill an enjoyment of the mountains for them. So yeah.
I love
Yes, I was going to say, Nancy is a grandma. She has two daughters and now 3 grandchildren in the last year and a half. So she's suddenly found herself back in that camp of looking after the very little ones again, and inspiring a new generation. So yeah, I know big changes at this end.
No, definitely. And and how that, I always find it interesting how we tend to sort of see it as entirely, our life sort of, we sort of determine what we want to take on at different stages and all that. And like you said, so much of it is about actually what situation you happen to be in terms of all those different life stages where you're suddenly accounting for, okay, I've got to drag these children up the hills and somehow and somehow get them to like it as well.
Exactly, that's the truth. Which
for us normally involves some sort of bribery and
I know, it's sad but true. But yeah, but I think for me, my experience of running Girls on Hills alongside being a mum is probably becoming more and more commonplace in the respect that I think since the lockdowns and everything, lots of people are working from home, and many women are in the situation that I'm in, trying to sort of juggle work and family, and they if you're working from home, the two things become sometimes inseparable, and what you can do with your work and what you do with your family, you have to factor it all in and fit it all in, and it's just different different challenges, definitely.
No, absolutely. And yeah, like you say, that having to see this as part of everything that you do, or finding a way to see it as part of everything you do, rather than like, okay, I'm going to park it now and off I go up the hills.
You can't leave it at the door.
3 hours of space to myself. Isn't it lovely? That this is sort of interwoven, the tapestry, I guess, how everything becomes interwoven, and still prioritizing that time for yourself, which, I know that's a conversation I have with so many friends and clients, is about that. How you can find those moments. So I'm going to ask you a question that I ask all my guests who come on the show, which is, if someone's listening to this and they're either thinking like me, oh, wow, that sounds absolutely amazing, and I'd love to start, trail running or getting into sort of, running in that way, or, I've got an adventure, or I've got something that I'd really love to do, but I don't quite know where to start. What's the one piece of advice you'd give them?
I think my first thing would just be to not, don't assume you can't do it. Basically, don't assume it's something that you're not capable of doing. Assume it's probably easier than it looks. And that would be the first thing I would say. And I'd also say, if you're trying to find your own adventure, then make it something that's really important to you, something that's that's going to really hold your fancy, that's going to help you strive for it. So you have to be a bit creative and personalize it so that it's it is your adventure and not somebody else's adventure. And I think that also can help to deal with some of those anxieties around, is this for me, and can I do it? I think making it something of your own and kind of owning it, if you like, is that a really great first step.
That is such wonderful advice. I'm not sure we've had that on the show, which is amazing, because I ask this to everybody, and that's quite a lot. I've had sort of 50 odd people telling me their advice, all of which is amazing. But that point about personalization or meaning, I think is so vital, because it's that in the end that helps you navigate the barriers and the challenges.
Exactly.
As well.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
And those are the things that you keep going for a reason. That's amazing. Keri, thank you so much. I could keep chatting for ages. But, if people do want to find out more about you and Girls on Hills, where can they go?
You can check out our website, which is basically girlsonhills.com. And if you click events from that website, then it'll take you to our list of courses and events. We don't have as many at this time of year and over the winter. So most of the running courses are through spring, summer, but we will have some winter skills courses happening, and they'll be up. The dates for those will be up in the next few weeks.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I'll pop all of those links in the show notes as well, so everyone, including me, can go and check this out afterwards. But thank you so much again. That was absolutely amazing, and wishing you all the very best with Girls on Hills. I can't wait to see where it goes next as well.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
So a huge thank you to Keri for talking to me and for sharing her motivation. I mean, I don't know about you, but during that conversation, Keri's passion for what she does just absolutely shone through, and genuinely, I could have chatted about it for hours. I was absolutely sold. And that's not coming from someone who counts long distance running among one of my great passions in life. I wanted to pick up this week on Keri's point that she made. When I asked her, what advice would you give somebody? And when she said, make the assumption that it's not as hard as it looks. And I thought that was a really lovely principle. I know I said it in the podcast, but often, because I experience this, and often I'll look at photos on social media, on Instagram or whatever, of people doing really amazing things and think, oh, I couldn't do that. Or I couldn't possibly, I don't even understand how they would achieve something like that. Or I don't even know where I would start. It looks so hard. Gosh, that sounds so hard. And with that thought, I put myself off, and I'm like, well, it's so hard. I don't even think I could try. I know from lots of other guests I've spoken to that there's been sort of similar advice around, get started or put one foot in front of the other. But I think even further back than that is that catching those thoughts that you have when, you see somebody doing something that you perceive to be hard, and you make the assumption about how difficult it might be without actually having experienced it. And definitely that's the case for me with the idea of trail running or distance running. I'm so in awe of people who complete ultra marathons and run those sorts of distances. But I think it can be applied to all other aspects in life. I think it can be applied to work. It can be applied to family. It can be applied to all sorts of different things where we make an assumption about the challenge that something presents and whether we are capable of meeting that challenge. So I think that's something I'm certainly going to take away to reflect this week. What is the story I'm telling myself about not only myself, but about the challenge itself, or about, what it is that I'm seeing or looking at. And actually, if I shifted or altered that narrative, would it change the way I felt about it? Would it change my sense of possibility of taking part or participating in something if it appeals to me? So I'd love to offer you the same challenge this week as well. When you're seeing those pictures or those images or those, people are sharing what they've done, just notice what's going on in your own minds when you listen to it. Is it something you're telling yourself that, I couldn't do that, that's too hard? So anyway, I'm going to leave it there. I hope that you have a wonderful week. Thank you so much, as always, for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, please do pop along wherever you listen, your favorite platform. and leave a review. That would be wonderful. Otherwise, if you want to get in touch and pick up any of the aspects that we've discussed in the show or anything in general, please do reach out. You can find me on Instagram, Resilience at Work, or at Everyday Adventure Pod. You can find me on Facebook in the Everyday Adventure Club. You can also reach out to me on LinkedIn, Nikki Bass, or you can go to my website, resiliencework.co.uk. Get in touch, send me an email, send me a message there, or subscribe to my newsletter, which I need to send out relatively soon. We also have a couple of spots still left on our winter adventure taking place in March next year. So if you're interested in that, please do reach out and get in touch. Otherwise, I really hope I will see you back here again next week, same time. I will have another incredible everyday adventure, and this is quite a special one. This is going to be focused on remembrance as well. But I really hope you join me back again here next week. I look forward to speaking to you then. Take care. Bye.